So today we're going to look at ways to deal with a sentence when we don't know where to get started. Here I'm going to give you a little bit of context. Romulus has just killed his brother Remus. You will remember the story, the two boys who are brought up by the she-wolf. He has just killed the brother and he is now starting the foundation of Rome. Okay, he's now starting the buildings and organizing it, etc. So we are talking about Romulus doing something here. We know that. So let's read the sentence. Palatium primum in quo ipse erat educatus munit. Okay, so the first thing we can ask ourselves is the verbs. Where are the verbs? Find the verbs or the verb. So in this case, if you read the sentence, Palatium primum in quo ipse erat, that's a verb. Educatus munit, that's another verb. Now, is this erat on its own? It's a third person singular. We have an educatus next to it, which is from educo, to bring up. It probably is a participle. Yes, so participle plus imperfect of the verb to be, this will be a verb altogether. Yes, a verbal form, a periphrastic one. Then we have two verbs. One is erat educatus, the other one is munit. We need to establish how they relate to each other. Are they in coordination? So do we have two sentences here, independent from each other, and maybe we'll have a conjunction or comma separating them? Or is it the case that we have one of the clauses subordinated to the other one? So let's look at the conjunctions and the linking words between these two. So Palatium primum in quo, quo, interesting find. You will have learned before that quo is from qui quae quod, and it's a relative pronoun. So if what we have here is a subordinate relative clause, we can pretty much safely ignore it for the moment because it will probably only be given us information about one of the words outside of it. For the moment, we can take it like that. So we have now been left with a much shorter clause, and I'm going to choose a different color to underline it. So now we have Palatium primum munit. Yeah, that's the main information that we're given. Now, this has become much easier because we can just start translating the verb. Need, that's the verb. So we can ask, what is happening here? Who is doing what? So we can see that it's a third person, and we were talking about Romulus, so it will be a he. The verb means to fortify, so we need to think, is this present, perfect, imperfect, etc. You can see from the ending that it's the perfect. So this will be a he, that's a third person singular. And the tense will be the perfect. And it's indicative and active. So he fortified. Now we can start asking questions to the verb. What did he fortify? So he fortified the Palatine. This is what we have in the accusative. The Palatine, you'll probably have it in your vocabulary list, is one of the 7 hills of Rome. So if we bring here this lovely image from the Wikipedia, you can see the city of Rome with its 7 hills. This is some useful information to have. And the Palatine is here. This was the first core of the Roman city, yeah, and in mythology, but as well we think in the Iron Age as well, that's where the first settlements. So we can remove this now. Ooh, not the whole thing, we're going to remove only the picture. There we go, bye-bye picture, off you go, yeah, and this we can remove as well. So the Palatine, that initial hill of Rome. Let's organize our thoughts a little bit here. So we had translated Munid, he fortified. Now we can add what he fortified. So Palatium, the Palatine Hill, Munid. He fortified the Palatium. Then we have another word here, primum. I can see how this could be a source of confusion for some because you might be more used to primo as an adverb, meaning first, and you might start to wonder, why how do I know if it's an adverb? In this case, it's acting as an adverb, meaning first, or if it's agreeing with Palatium. But the truth is, whatever you choose, it means first. So, and it's active in a very adverbial way. So don't give this too much thought and simply add it to the words that you have already managed to translate. So now we have, let's change a bit the word order to play around with the words. So primum, Palatium, munit. First, he fortified the Palatine. Excellent. And then we have the subordinate clause that we want to look at. And we are told that it is in quo ipse erat educatus. So the verb we had already said is erat educatus. So should we do the same here, the same thing here again? We are going to write the verb. So the verb is, let's make some space. Have an idea. I'm going to pick this sentence and I'm going to take it with me away from everything else. And now it should be easier to move it around. There you go. Off you go, sentence. Right. So now let's just add some of the marks that we are going to need. So we have in quo ipse erat educatus, and now we are concentrating in this sentence and this clause. Yeah. So now we know, we have said that the verb is erat educatus. Now, it is not that difficult to translate a verb like this in isolation, because you know you're talking about Romulus. This is a nominative singular masculine, and the verb means to bring up, to grow up. So really, this can only be an imperfect form. So the verb to be, as I was saying, is in the imperfect. And remember, the imperfect plus the participle gives us the pluperfect tense, which is a bit complicated, but you will get used to this. So when you see the verb to be in the present, this is a perfect form, you always go one tense back. When you see it in the imperfect, it is a pluperfect. So it had already happened in the past. So he had been brought up. Passive, yes, the passive particip form. So he had been brought up. Okay, and now we can ask ourselves, who had been brought up? We obviously know that's Romulus, but maybe there's also a word in the sentence that tells us that. And indeed, here it is. We have ipse. From ipse, ipsa, ipsum. You know this really well. So you can add it here. That's himself. Ipse erat educatus. Okay, so he himself had been brought up. He himself had been brought up. And then we have another element to the sentence, which is the clause starting with in. So this is obviously going to tell us where he was brought up. So he himself had been brought up in quo. So for this quo now, we need to find what the antecedent is. It will be masculine or neuter, and it will be singular, that we know. It is ablative here because it's linked with the in, and the in always takes the ablative when it's telling us a place where something is happening. So, okay, we're looking for a place. Not too difficult. We can quite safely assume that it's the Palatine. So, he himself had been educated. You could say in Palatio, but actually, this in quo, yeah, this is the place where he has been educated, brought up. So now we can put it all together and um, translate it as a whole. So first, he fortified the Palatine Hill in which he himself had been brought up. So he had been brought up in the Palatine Hill. Actually, we know from mythology and also from other sources, like for example Varro, that tell us that the she-wolf brought up Romulus and Remus in the Palatine in what we call the Casa Romuli, which you will know. And don't get confused with your Spanish here. Casa doesn't mean house in Latin. In classical Latin, is a hut. It's the hut of Romulus. And there's still a bit of disagreement about if there are any remains that the Romans thought precisely this is where it is or not, and which ones they are. But anyway, this is the hut where Romulus and Remus were brought up by this she-wolf. Okay, so what have we learned today? We've learned to translate this lovely sentence. I am going to show you now the sentence on its own. You can turn off the sound, turn off the video for a little bit and think about it. And now I'm going to help you translate it. So first, he fortified the Palatine in which he himself had been educated. Now, that doesn't necessarily sound great. And we can actually change it because the place in which can be easily translated as where, yeah, as an OB. So first he built, first he fortified is better than just build because it's like build up or strengthen or build the walls around even, yeah. So first he fortified the Palatine where, I prefer that, where he himself had been brought up. Now, if you've made it to minute 12 of my musings about this sentence, maybe you would like to have a bit of an extra information. Can you think of any words in English coming from Palatium or in any other language? Yeah, so our word palace comes from Palatium. This is because in Augustan times, the most luxurious palaces or houses were built there. This was the posh area to live in Rome. And actually, if you go to Rome nowadays, it's pretty much just an archaeological area where you can go and see the foundations of those houses and some of the walls are left there, etc. It's a beautiful place to be, by the way. So we have palace in English. If you think about Spanish, palacio, German, palast, palast. What else do we have? Oh, Italian, obviously, palazzo, and Catalan, which is my mother tongue, palau. And yeah, this is the story of the Palatine Hill. We will continue reading some more Livy, and we will look at the other hills and all the different stories. If you have any questions, because I've gone on about this sentence for 30 minutes, and I'm sure people still will have noticed there's something missing in my explanation that they might like to know, please just pop it in the comments and I will reply. Thanks for listening, and I hope this has helped you with your translations. Walete!